Millions of albums, sold-out stadiums, rock legends who looked richer than anyone on earth, yet many ended up completely broke. One superstar sold 43 million albums and still went bankrupt. Billy Joel lost $90 million after trusting his own family. The Goo Goo Dolls were earning just $6,000 a year while their songs dominated the charts. Sly Stone went from performing for 500,000 people at Woodstock to living in a van. And one member of Fleetwood Mac lost an estimated $80 million.
Well, I'm on the Downeaster Alexa.
These aren't rumors or tabloid stories. They're backed by lawsuits, bankruptcy filings, tax records, and the artist's own interviews. Stay until the end, because after exposing the rock stars who lost everything, we'll reveal the music legends worth millions, even billions, who chose to live like ordinary people.
I'll be there till the final act.
The truth behind rock music's biggest fortunes is far more shocking than the songs themselves. Subscribe now. Let's go. Meatloaf, from 43 million copies to bankruptcy. Massive albums, you have to think of Meatloaf. His 1977 album Bat Out of Hell is one of the best-selling records of all time. We're talking about more than 43 million copies sold. That's an insane number. It still sells around 200,000 copies every single year. Meatloaf was a global superstar, a household name with a powerhouse voice and a theatrical style that nobody else had. He should have been one of the richest musicians on the planet forever.
I'll be there till the final act.
But here's the thing nobody tells you. With great success comes even greater trouble. His career was immediately hit with massive problems. There were fights over money and creative control. Then, he lost his voice, which led to a nervous breakdown. But the biggest blow came from the people he trusted. His legal life was a disaster. He was hit with lawsuits from all sides, including one from his own songwriter, Jim Steinman. At one point in the 1980s, Meatloaf was facing lawsuits that totaled a stunning $80 million. $80 million. He was forced to file for bankruptcy. He lost his home. He lost his publishing rights to his own songs. Everything. He went from being one of the biggest stars in the world to having absolutely nothing. Billy Joel, $90 million stolen by family.
Well, I'm on the Downeaster Alexa.
Billy Joel is a true music legend. The piano man himself. He has sold over 150 million records worldwide. He has 33 top 40 hits. He sold out Madison Square Garden more times than any other artist. The man is a living legend, and his bank account should have reflected that. He was earning tens of millions of dollars a year. A true empire of music. What many overlooked was that Billy put his entire financial life in the hands of one person. That person was his manager, Frank Weber, who also happened to be his brother-in-law. Billy trusted him completely. He let him handle all the contracts, all the investments, and all the money. But that trust was a terrible mistake. Frank Weber was not managing the money. He was taking it. He secretly drained Billy Joel's accounts. He put Billy's money into all sorts of shady deals, from bad real estate to horse farms, all while taking huge cuts for himself. By the time Billy Joel found out, the damage was done. He filed a $90 million lawsuit against his former manager. But most of the money was gone forever. The music icon was left with huge debts and a feeling of total betrayal. It is one thing for your own family to betray you. It is a completely different thing to be betrayed by the very industry that is supposed to be paying you. Goo Dolls, world-famous band, $6,000 a year. If you were alive in the 1990s, you could not escape the Goo Goo Dolls. Their song Iris was one of the biggest hits of the decade. It spent a record-breaking 18 weeks at #1 on the Billboard charts. Their other songs like Name and Slide were also massive. The band sold millions and millions of albums. Their music was everywhere. John Rzeznik, the lead singer, was a certified rock star. But here is the kicker. While their songs were playing on every radio station, the band members themselves were completely broke. You see, when they were young and desperate, they signed an awful record contract. It was a deal that gave almost all the money to the record label. The band was selling millions of albums, but they were not seeing any of the cash. In fact, John Rzeznik revealed that after all those hits, his yearly royalty check was for about $6,000. $6,000. He was a world-famous rock star, and he was living in a tiny apartment, barely able to pay his bills. They were famous, but they were poorer than most of their fans. It was a shocking look at how the music business can trap its biggest stars. David Crosby, $25 million on personal habits. David Crosby is not just a rock star. He is rock royalty. He was a founding member of two of the most important bands in history, the Byrds. Then Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. He played at Woodstock. His voice helped define the entire 1960s and 1970s generation. He was making a fortune from record sales, royalties, and sold-out stadium tours. But not all things are what they seem. Behind the beautiful harmonies, David Crosby was struggling with some very serious personal demons. He got deep into a hard partying lifestyle, and his personal habits became the most important thing in his life. He later admitted that he spent $25 million feeding those habits. $25 million. The crash was long and painful. His life spiraled out of control. In 1985, after getting in trouble with the law, he was left with nothing. He filed for bankruptcy. He was homeless with no money and no friends left in the industry. He ended up having to live in a friend's spare room. It was one of the most dramatic falls from grace in music history. A true icon reduced to nothing by his own costly choices. Courtney Love, inheriting hundreds of millions, losing it all. Courtney Love was a massive rock star in her own right as the frontwoman of the band Hole. They had huge hits in the 1990s like Celebrity Skin and Violet. But her fame exploded when she married Kurt Cobain, the leader of Nirvana. After his tragic end, she inherited a massive fortune. We're talking about publishing rights and royalties that were worth hundreds of millions of dollars. She was for a time one of the wealthiest women in music. But that mountain of cash disappeared in a shockingly short amount of time. The thing nobody tells you is that a sudden fortune can be a huge burden. Courtney's life was famously chaotic. She spent money at an alarming rate. She also claimed that she was the victim of massive fraud. She said shady accountants and bad deals drained her accounts without her knowing. By 2020, the unthinkable had happened. The massive Nirvana fortune was almost all gone. She was nearly bankrupt and even had to move in with relatives for a time. It was a shocking end to one of music's biggest windfalls. Tom Petty, filing for bankruptcy on purpose to escape bad contract. Tom Petty was a true American rock and roll hero. From American Girl to Free Fallin', his music is timeless. He and his band, the Heartbreakers, were a huge success from their very first album. They were the real deal, and their label, Shelter Records, knew it. But here is where the story gets crazy. Early in his career, his record label was sold to a much bigger company. Tom Petty did not want to be sold along with it. He felt like he was just a piece of property being traded without his permission. He wanted out of his contract, but the label refused to let him go. So in 1979, Tom Petty did something no one expected. He declared bankruptcy on purpose. He claimed he was $500,000 in debt, which made his contract with the old label void. It was an incredibly risky power move. He was a rising star, and he put his entire career on the line, going broke just to win his freedom. In the end, the gamble worked. He was able to sign a new, much better deal with a different label. But for a time, one of rock's biggest rising stars was legally penniless. Ted Nugent, millions lost on Mink Farm A&D bad investments. In the 1970s, Ted Nugent was one of the biggest hard rock guitarists on the planet. His song Cat Scratch Fever was a massive hit, and his wild, high-energy stage shows were legendary. He was selling out arenas and making millions of dollars. Like many new millionaires, Ted decided to invest his money. But he did not just buy stocks or bonds. Ted Nugent bought some of the strangest things you can imagine. He bought a mink farm. He bought hotels. He poured his rock and roll fortune into a bunch of wild businesses that he knew nothing about. To put it mildly, the investments were a total disaster. The mink farm was a complete bust. His other businesses failed one by one. By 1980, the rock star who was just filling arenas was suddenly and completely bankrupt. He had to start all over again, having lost his entire fortune to a bunch of bad ideas and a farm full of minks. Mick Fleetwood, filing for bankruptcy multiple times. Mick Fleetwood is the drummer and the namesake of one of the biggest bands in the history of the world, Fleetwood Mac. Their 1977 album Rumors has sold over 40 million copies. The band has sold over 120 million records total. They are in the pantheon of music gods. Mick Fleetwood should have been able to buy his own private island and retire. But what many overlooked was Mick's lifestyle. He lived the rock star dream to the absolute fullest. He bought lavish mansions, expensive cars, and anything else he wanted. He also made some terrible real estate deals that lost him millions. The problem was he never stopped spending, even when the money was not coming in as fast. The result? Mick Fleetwood has filed for bankruptcy multiple times. His first big bankruptcy was in 1984, but his money troubles followed him for decades. Despite being the drummer in one of the most successful bands of all time, he found himself broke over and over again. He was a perfect example of how you can earn $1 billion and still end up with nothing if you spend $2 billion. John Oates, Hall & Oates, penthouse to poverty. In the 1980s, you could not get any bigger than Hall & Oates. With massive #1 hits like Maneater, Rich Girl, and Private Eyes, they dominated the charts. John Oates with his signature mustache and guitar was half of the most successful music duo of all time. They were everywhere, and they were making an absolute fortune. John Oates was living the high life. He had a penthouse in New York, a house in the country, a private plane, and a collection of vintage cars. He assumed the money would just keep rolling in forever. He trusted his managers to handle everything, and he never bothered to look at the books. Then in 1987, the music stopped. He went to an ATM, and it said insufficient funds. He was confused. He called his business manager and found out the terrible truth. He was broke. Just like that. Poor management and wild spending had drained his entire fortune. He had to sell everything. His houses, his cars, his plane. All of it. He was a rock icon who had to start from zero. Willie Nelson, $32 million tax bill. Willie Nelson is more than a musician. He is an American icon. He is a country rock pioneer who crossed over and became a massive star with hits like On the Road Again. He is famous for his laid-back vibe, his red bandana, and his legendary concerts. He was also making a ton of money. But the thing nobody tells you is that the government's tax department, the ears, is always watching. And Willie, well, he had not been paying his taxes properly for a very long time. He was getting bad advice from his accountants who were putting his money into illegal tax shelters. In 1990, the ears finally caught up with him. They hit him with one of the biggest tax bills in history. $32 million. Willie did not have that kind of money. The government seized everything he owned. They took his homes, his tour bus, his instruments, even his gold records. They auctioned it all off to the public. It was a total and complete financial wipeout. He was left with nothing but the clothes on his back. Ronald Isley, tax evasion, prison time. Ronald Isley is a true music legend. As the lead singer of the Isley Brothers, his career has spanned over 6 decades. From Shout in the 1950s to It's Your Thing in the 1960s and all the way to his R&B hits, he is a powerhouse. He influenced everyone from the Beatles to Michael Jackson. He was living the life of a king with mansions, yachts, and luxury cars. But like Willie Nelson, Ronald Isley had a secret. He was not paying his taxes for years and years. He was hiding his income from the government. He was cashing checks and demanding payment in cash to keep it all off the books. The Ears does not let things go. They built a massive case against him. In 1997, they seized his assets, claiming he owed $5 million in back taxes. But he still did not learn his lesson. He kept hiding money. Finally, in 2006, a judge had enough. Ronald Isley was found guilty of tax evasion and sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. The music icon, known as Mr. Biggs, was brought down by his refusal to pay his bills. He lost his money and his freedom. Sly Stone, from Woodstock to homeless in a van. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, Sly Stone was one of the most important musicians in the world. As the leader of Sly and the Family Stone, he changed music forever. He mixed funk, rock, and soul. His performance at Woodstock is legendary, with hits like Everyday People and Dance to the Music. He was a genius and a superstar. But what many overlooked was his intense and very public struggle with personal demons. He got tangled in a very hard partying lifestyle that completely took over his life. He became unreliable, missing shows and recordings. At the same time, he made a terrible business decision. He signed away the publishing rights to all his songs to his manager for a bad deal. The hits stopped coming and the money dried up, but his expensive habits did not. By the 2010s, the man who had played for 500,000 people at Woodstock was completely broke. He was homeless, living in a white van in a bad neighborhood in Los Angeles. It was one of the saddest and most shocking falls in music history. Leif Garrett, teen idol, sleeping in his car. In the late 1970s, Leif Garrett was the biggest teen idol on the planet. He was a rock singer and an actor. He was on the cover of every teen magazine. His concerts were scenes of mass hysteria with thousands of screaming fans. He was a millionaire before he was even 18 years old. He had everything. But the problem with getting so famous so young is that you have no idea how to handle it. He was a kid with adult money, and he fell deep into the rock and roll world. He got involved in a hard partying lifestyle. His personal life began to spiral. He was involved in a terrible car crash that left his friend paralyzed. The lawsuits from that incident were just the beginning. His fame vanished as fast as it came. The hits stopped, and the money was gone. By the 1990s, he was bankrupt. He was so broke that at one point he was found sleeping in his car on a street in Hollywood. The ultimate teen dream had turned into a total nightmare. Pete Doherty, millions earned, millions lost to chaos. In the early 2000s, Pete Doherty was one of the biggest and most talked about rock stars in the United Kingdom. As the leader of the bands The Libertines and Baby Shambles, he was seen as a brilliant songwriter. He was making millions from album sales and sold-out tours. But his music was often overshadowed by his famously chaotic personal life. He was known for his hard partying lifestyle and his very public, very messy relationships. He became more famous for his personal problems than for his songs. That kind of chaos is expensive. He earned millions, but it all went to feeding his very expensive habits. Bad business deals and a reputation for being unreliable did not help. By 2007, the money was gone. The man who was just on the cover of magazines was now on the verge of total bankruptcy. A classic story of a talent swallowed by his own lifestyle. MC5, revolutionary band, $80,000 in debt. Let's go back to Detroit in the late 1960s. The band MC5 was changing the game. Their sound was loud, fast, and aggressive. Their live album Kick Out the Jams is a landmark. They are considered one of the first ever punk or heavy metal bands. They were raw, powerful, and incredibly controversial. But that was the problem. They were too controversial. Their shows were wild. They had a hard partying lifestyle as a group, and their radical political beliefs made them enemies of record labels and radio stations. They burned bright and incredibly fast. Poor promotion and their own chaotic behavior meant they never saw the big money their influence deserved. By 1970, just a couple of years after their famous album, the band was already $80,000 in debt. That was a ton of money back then. They were completely bankrupt. The band that started a music revolution could not even pay their own bills. Harry Nilsson, $5 million stolen, $5 million owed. Harry Nilsson was not just a songwriter. He was a songwriter's songwriter. He was a musical ghost, a phantom of the 1970s whose voice and talent were so staggering that he barely ever had to tour. He didn't need to. His genius spoke for itself. This was the man the Beatles, the single most successful band in human history, called their favorite American artist. John Lennon and Paul McCartney, at the height of their fame, held a press conference just to announce that Nilsson was their guy. He was close friends with all of them, especially John Lennon and Ringo Starr. He was a core part of the rock and roll elite, and his music, it was timeless. He had massive, worldwide, era-defining hits. Everybody's Talking became the haunting theme for the classic film Midnight Cowboy. His cover of Without You is to this day considered one of the most powerful and heartbreaking vocal performances ever recorded. It was a global #1 smash that earned him a Grammy. He was making millions. He was an artist of an impossibly high caliber who also had massive commercial success. He was by all accounts set for life. But he made one catastrophic mistake. It wasn't drugs. It wasn't a bad album. He made the simple mistake of trusting the wrong person. He put his entire fortune, every dollar he had ever earned, with a financial advisor named Cindy Schneeberger. He didn't just hire her, he trusted her. She was a friend. She was part of his inner circle. He gave her complete control, believing she was wisely investing his money, protecting his family's future, and keeping it safe. But she was a complete and total fraud. She was a predator hiding in plain sight. Schneeberger was not investing his money. She was stealing it. This wasn't a one-time thing. It was a slow, systematic, and sociopathic betrayal. For years, she secretly drained his accounts one by one, siphoning his royalty checks and liquidating his assets. She was living a life of luxury on his dime while he believed his fortune was growing. By the time Harry finally discovered the deception, it was too late. The vault was empty. His $5 million fortune was gone, every last cent. But the nightmare was only just beginning. When the dust settled, Nilsson learned the terrifying truth. He wasn't just broke. He was in debt. He was left with over $5 million in debt, owing money to the heirs and countless other creditors. He had just $300 to his name. He was distraught. He sued Schneeberger, trying desperately to get his money back, to find some justice. But the stress of the betrayal and the financial ruin was too much. In 1993, shortly after discovering the fraud, Nilsson, who already had a history of heart problems, suffered a massive, debilitating heart attack. He spent the last year of his life a broken man, desperately trying to record one final album to leave something for his family. In 1994, Harry Nilsson passed away. He died completely bankrupt, a victim of the worst and most personal kind of betrayal. The woman who stole his life's work served less than 2 years in prison and never paid back a dime. Cat power, health crisis, bankruptcy, knife's edge economics. Not all rock stars are stadium gods. Some are whisperers. Some are legends in the shadows. Chan Marshall, who performs as Cat Power, is one of the most loved, respected, and revered artists in indie rock. For decades, her haunting, vulnerable, and minimalist music has earned her staggering critical reviews and a hardcore devoted fanbase. She is a true artist, a poet with a guitar. But here's the cold, hard truth of the music business. Indie success does not always mean big money. Critical acclaim doesn't pay the bills. While she was pouring her soul into making her 2012 album Sun, she ran into a perfect storm of disaster. This album was supposed to be her masterpiece, a new sound she had spent years perfecting. She was so obsessed with getting it right that she poured all of her own money into finishing it. She bankrolled it herself, emptying her savings to pay for studio time and musicians. And that's when the first crisis hit. She was suddenly struck by a serious health crisis. She developed a life-threatening condition called angioedema, a severe and terrifying swelling that can close off your airway. She needed immediate, extensive, and expensive medical care. But she was an independent musician. She had no health insurance. The second crisis hit immediately after. To save money, she had planned to tour to promote the album. In the modern music world, touring is the only way artists make real money. But her health condition was so severe, she couldn't. Doctors forbade it. She had to cancel the entire tour. The combination was an instant financial apocalypse. All of her money was gone, sunk into an album she couldn't promote. All of her income, the tour money, vanished overnight. And now she was being crushed by a mountain of medical bills that she had no way to pay. She was completely wiped out. Chan Marshall, one of the most celebrated musicians of her generation, had to file for bankruptcy. She was a successful, famous, and beloved musician who was left in total financial ruin. It was a terrifying look at how even the most successful artists are living on a knife's edge. One sickness, one canceled tour, one step away from absolute disaster. Jerry Lee Lewis, the killer, brought down by the ears. Jerry Lee Lewis was called the Killer, and he earned it. He wasn't just a musician. He was a force of nature, a true founding father of rock and roll. In the 1950s, he was a superstar on par with Elvis Presley himself. He was a wild piano-pounding madman. He didn't just play the piano. He attacked it, kicking over the stool, standing up, and hammering the keys with his feet, his wild blonde hair flying. His hits, Great Balls of Fire and Whole Lot of Shaking Going On, weren't just songs. They were cultural explosions that defined a new rebellious generation. He was making $10,000 a night, a king's ransom, in the 1950s. But his career was famously and instantly derailed by controversy. His personal life was a mess. And in 1958, it all blew up when the world learned he had married his 13-year-old cousin, Myra, overnight. His career was over. He was blacklisted from radio. His $10,000 a night gigs became $250 a night gigs in tiny smoke-filled dive bars. He kept performing. He kept touring, but he never ever got back to the top. And he had another problem. A huge problem. He hated paying his taxes. And the ears hates when you don't pay your taxes. The government would not let it go. They were chasing him for decades for unpaid taxes, penalties, and interest that piled up into the millions. They seized his assets. In 1979, federal agents raided his home and seized his property, including cars, jewelry, and his most famous possession, his piano. They literally took his piano to pay his debts. They seized his assets again in the 1980s. He just could not get ahead of his debts. He was constantly hiding his money, living like a man on the run. Finally, in 1988, the killer was killed by his finances. The rebellion was over. Jerry Lee Lewis filed for bankruptcy. He owed a staggering $3 million to a long, long list of people. And who was at the very top of that list? The ears. Marvin Gaye, cocaine addiction, court-ordered album. Marvin Gaye was a certified genius. He wasn't just a singer. He was the voice. He was one of the biggest stars at Motown. The Prince of Soul. He dominated the charts with hit after hit, like I Heard It Through the Grapevine and Ain't No Mountain High Enough. He was the smooth, polished, perfect superstar. But then the artist rebelled. He fought his own label to release his masterpiece album, What's Going On. It wasn't just a collection of songs, it was a political, spiritual, and social statement. It changed music forever and cemented his status as a global icon. But his personal life was a chaotic, tragic, and expensive mess. He went through an incredibly difficult and public divorce from his wife Anna Gordy, the sister of Motown founder Berry Gordy. The divorce proceedings were brutal. At the same time, Marvin Gaye had very expensive personal habits. He was battling a crippling addiction to cocaine, which was draining his money at an alarming rate. He was spending faster than he was earning, burning through his millions on drugs, failed ventures, and a lavish lifestyle. He was also, like Jerry Lee Lewis, deep in debt to the ears. He was hemorrhaging money from every direction. By 1976, the genius was broke. He was forced to file for bankruptcy. He was so broke that he could not even pay the alimony he owed his ex-wife. He had no money, no assets left to give. So the judge made one of the strangest and most humiliating rulings in music history. The court ordered Marvin to give his ex-wife the royalties from his next album. His only remaining asset was his future creativity. Marvin, bitter and furious, went into the studio to record the album. He called it Hear My Dear. It wasn't a love album. It was a raw, painful 70-minute long musical diary about the entire bitter divorce. He literally recorded his pain and gave it away. The album was a financial failure at the time. He had to give his art away just to pay his bills. And it still wasn't enough. He fled to Europe to live as a tax exile, a broken man. So those are the stories of ruin. Artists who lost everything. Now, let's talk about something completely different. Something rarely discussed in the music world. What happens when you have everything and choose to act like you have nothing? Did you know that some rock stars worth over $1 billion still drive old cars, wear thrift store clothes, and live in modest homes? From Beatles legends flying economy to grunge icons working regular jobs, here are rock and roll stars that live like they are poorer. Paul McCartney, billionaire flying economy. Paul McCartney is a music legend and a billionaire. Paul McCartney lives a surprisingly simple life. Even though he found massive success with the Beatles, Wings, and as a solo artist, he never let money change him. While other celebrities surround themselves with luxury, McCartney stays careful with his spending and keeps things modest. One of the biggest surprises is how he raised his children. Even though he had plenty of money, he made them pay for their own education because he believes in self-reliance. He also avoids fancy travel. Instead of private jets and first-class tickets, McCartney is often seen flying economy. For him, money is just a tool, not a way to show off. He has never forgotten the value of hard work, something he learned growing up in Liverpool. His daily choices reflect this mindset. A vegetarian for most of his life, he prefers cooking his own simple meals instead of hiring top chefs. His wardrobe is just as modest. Casual, often the same outfits repeated. While other stars show off expensive brands, McCartney focuses on what really matters: music, family, and staying true to himself. Dave Grohl, stadium filler, local bar regular. Dave Grohl fills stadiums and earns massive respect in the music world. But despite his fame, he still lives like an ordinary guy. While other rock stars chase mansions and luxury, Grohl sticks to a simple, grounded life. Even after his success with Nirvana and Foo Fighters, he never gave in to the millionaire lifestyle. His home is practical, not flashy. His car, just a regular one. He doesn't see the point in spending huge amounts on things that don't really matter. Instead, he puts his money where it counts, helping others. Grohl funds struggling musicians, supports music programs, and donates to causes he believes in. Unlike many famous rock stars who surround themselves with bodyguards, Grohl prefers to hang out in local bars, talking with fans like an old friend. No arrogance, no acting like a celebrity, just a guy who loves music and good company. He even pays for strangers' meals sometimes, quietly spreading kindness without making a big deal about it. Charlie Watts, Rolling Stone. Simple life. Charlie Watts, unlike most rock stars, chose a different path. As the drummer of the Rolling Stones, he could have lived a wild, flashy life. But he stayed away from the chaos while his bandmates enjoyed fame, fortune, and endless parties. For over 50 years, he remained loyal to his wife Shirley. Unlike many musicians, he never got caught up in the world of groupies or scandals. Instead of a mansion in Hollywood, he lived quietly in the English countryside, surrounded by his favorite Arabian horses. If he had one luxury, it was them. But even that came from love, not greed. Watts never liked being in the spotlight. He avoided interviews, skipped wild parties, and did not act like a typical rock star. His true passion was jazz. Even though he played in one of the biggest rock bands in history, he did not show off his wealth. He dressed in sharp but simple suits, always stylish, never flashy. Fame never seemed to matter to him. He did not see himself as a rock legend, just a drummer doing what he loved. Jack White, no phone, thrift store clothes. Jack White, the mind behind the White Stripes, could live like a rock star. But he chooses a simple life. Even with fame and fortune, he avoids luxury. Instead of big mansions, he rented a small apartment in Nashville. While other musicians buy expensive clothes and cars, he sticks to what fuels his music. He does not use modern gadgets. He has lived without a phone for years, preferring silence over distractions. His daily life follows strict rules. He avoids socializing too much and believes limits make creativity stronger. Even his music reflects this mindset. He records with old equipment and plays vintage instruments. His record label, Third Man Records, focuses on vinyl, not digital music. He believes music should be something real, not just a file on a computer. White does not waste money on luxury. He wears thrift store clothes and drives simple cars. Even when touring, he keeps costs low. Instead of spending on himself, he invests in projects that support musicians and keep music alive. Michael Stipe, small homes, books over gold. Michael Stipe, the lead singer of REM, never fit the rock star image. He could have bought castles. Instead, he chose small homes in New York and Berlin. His homes are not filled with gold, but with books and art that inspire him. For Stipe, money is not about status. He wears simple, comfortable clothes instead of designer fashion. His business choices reflect his values. He invested in a vegetarian restaurant in Athens, Georgia, not to make money but to support sustainability. Unlike other rock stars who ride in fancy cars, he takes the subway. He cares about the environment and supports green energy and reducing waste. His goal is to leave the world better than he found it. Even after REM ended, he stayed away from the spotlight. Instead of chasing fame, he focused on photography, sculpture, and personal art projects. Steve Albini, refusing royalties on Nirvana records. Steve Albini, a key figure in underground rock, helped shape the sound of some of the most famous albums in history. But unlike the artists he worked with, he never chased fame or money. He could have been a millionaire many times over. But he chose a different path. Albini refuses to take royalties, even for huge albums like In Utero by Nirvana. He sees music as a craft, not a business, and only charges a flat fee for his work. This decision has cost him millions. But he stands by it. He believes artists should own their work, not be in debt to producers. This belief has made him one of the most respected names in music, even if he never became as rich as others in his field. Even outside of music, he lives simply. He spends his time fixing equipment, playing poker, and working with bands who care more about art than money. Fame doesn't interest him. He doesn't want attention or wealth beyond what he needs to keep creating. He sees himself as a craftsman, not a businessman. And this mindset shapes everything he does. His independence matters more to him than any financial reward. Tommy Ramone, punk legend. Simple life. Tommy Ramone, the original drummer of the Ramones, was never a typical rock star. Even as punk rock took over the world, he avoided the wealth and excess that came with fame. The Ramones influenced generations. But they never had an easy path. They had to fight for every dollar, struggled to get played on the radio, and refused to change for mainstream success. Tommy knew fame didn't last. But music did. He wasn't in it for money. He just wanted to make music that spoke to outsiders. His drumming was raw, fast, and full of energy, just like his approach to life. While many rock stars embraced luxury, Tommy lived simply. He never owned flashy cars or got caught up in the Hollywood lifestyle. After leaving the drums, he faded into a quiet life. Far from the chaos of the rock world, he never cashed in on his fame, never turned his name into a brand. For him, punk was more than music. It was a way of life. He stayed involved behind the scenes, producing albums and shaping the sound of future bands. Even when the Ramones were no longer in the spotlight, his passion for music never faded. Ian Anderson, Jethro Tull, farmhouse over mansions. Ian Anderson, the leader of Jethro Tull, has spent years changing rock music. But his life is nothing like the wild lives of other rock stars. No huge mansions. No wild parties. Instead, he lives in an old farmhouse in England, surrounded by nature, not luxury. While others buy gold decorations and expensive art, he plants trees. To him, wealth isn't about money. It's about the air we breathe and the land we walk on. Anderson doesn't just talk about protecting nature. He does it. He spends his money on conservation, making sure his land stays healthy long after he's gone. Instead of buying sports cars, he plants forests. Instead of buying islands, he builds habitats for animals. He proves that success doesn't have to mean waste. He even helps bigger projects that protect the environment beyond his own land. Despite his long career and huge impact on music, he never got caught up in wanting more and more. He cares about living with purpose, not just collecting things. Billy Strings, young bluegrass icon, time over money. Billy Strings grew up with little, so he knows the value of $1. He doesn't waste money on flashy things. Instead, he focuses on his passion. Unlike old rock stars who hoarded their money, Billy invests in something different. Time. Time fishing. Time with family. Time enjoying the quiet moments that make life real. He keeps the people who have always been there for him close and doesn't get caught up in fame. One of the most interesting things about Billy is his love for fixing watches. While others buy fancy ones, he repairs them. He enjoys the careful work, the patience it takes. In an industry that moves fast, he finds peace in something slow. It's rare for a rising star to be this grounded, to resist the urge to chase wealth and status. Billy could be living like the rich and famous, but he chooses to stay real. Fame changes most people, but he holds on to who he is. Success comes and goes, but self-respect lasts forever. Mark Arm, Mudhoney, working regular job, making music. Mark Arm, the voice of Mudhoney, never chased fame or fortune. While bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam became superstars, he stayed in the shadows making raw, honest rock. He refused to sign big money deals or change his music to fit the industry's rules. Instead of living like a rich rock star, Mark works a regular job at Sub Pop Records, the label that helped start grunge. He spends his days packing and shipping records. By day, he works in the Sub Pop office. By night, he plays rock shows. Even as his band gained fans, he saw no reason to leave his routine for a life of luxury. Being a rock star never mattered to him. He stayed in his hometown of Seattle, surrounded by the same streets, bars, and grocery stores he had always known. Mark's music matches his simple way of life. Mudhoney became known for their rough homemade sound. They recorded on cheap cassette tapes in basements and garages. Even when the band got more popular, Mark refused to use expensive studios. He believed real rock music should be raw and imperfect. To him, music is about passion, not making everything sound perfect. His concerts are the same way. No fancy lights, no huge stage effects, just loud, pure rock music. While other bands charge high prices for tickets, Mark keeps his shows affordable so his fans can enjoy live music without spending too much. What you just watched is 40 documented accounts. 40 stories of artists who either lost everything or had everything and never used it. And the lesson underneath all of them is the same. The music industry is designed to separate artists from their money. Whether it's terrible contracts, family betrayal, bad investments, health crises, or simply choosing not to play the wealth game, rock stars face relentless pressure to commodify themselves. Some fell apart. Some stayed grounded. Either way, the real commodity was never their money. It was their art. So here's what I need from you. 1. Subscribe to this channel. We're bringing you the real stories, the documented accounts, the details that matter. 2. Join the membership. 1 coffee a month. That's all. That's how we keep doing this research at this level without cutting corners. 3. Watch another video. This channel is full of documented rock and music history that doesn't make the highlight reels. We've got stories. They're all real. 4. Think about what this means. These were people who created the soundtrack to your life, and many of them lost everything, or had everything, and walked away. That's the real story. That's what history should record. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring about the details. Thank you for wanting to know what actually happened, not what the mythology tells you happened. That's what this channel is built on.